to know how to read and write was a massive privilege.
Mhm.
When the Torah was written, when the New Testament was written, when the Quran was written, no one knew how to read.
Mm.
You had one guy holding a book in a town square reading out to everybody in there. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, magic man, how do you know how to translate this?"
Where did Twitchy Witch come from? And thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Um, where did Twitchy Witch come from? It has its story. Twitchy was someone that I knew. He was somebody twitchy and witchy. And then I kind of stopped knowing him and I took the name for myself. And I just thought, well, I mean, I'm kind of twitchy with my ADD and everything. So, yeah. And I just liked the way it sounded.
It's great. It's definitely taken off. And I've told you this before too. And I know it's a thing that you hear a lot of, but ever since I followed you on Instagram, it's just like every 3 days I have another Twitchy Witch makeup account that's not you, that's like following me and stuff.
My goodness. Yeah, I know there's an army of them. They
Yeah.
could make up a good couple football teams.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Cool. So I know that your knowledge on here is all like there's a lot there. I messed up that part of it, but it's all good. My knowledge in the field of your stuff is sophomoric, I would say at best, but nonetheless, I'm just going to give my general perception of the Hermetic teachings, and then you correct me and go wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know anything. No one knows anything. That's the whole essence of Hermetic teachings, I think.
Okay, that's
So,
fair. That's
don't
fair.
worry.
Okay, all right, cool. So I know that there's like the 7 principles of the Hermetic teachings, and that from what I've taken in, if you were to be a scholar of religious study, you could draw your way back to the Hermetic teachings through like any of these different dogmas and stuff like that. And there was Hermes Trismegistus, which at first I thought was a real person that ended up being 2 gods, but then the more I looked into it, wait a minute, he wasn't a real person, you know. So that's the part that I'm kind of like, what's the real story? And was the Kybalion written more recently to capture what was in the Emerald Tablet? And that's so yeah, just kind of, if you don't mind clearing that up for me.
Yeah. So Hermes Trismegistus is, I would say, as real as Jesus or Krishna. You might think of him as an avatar. And, he's also Thoth. Sometimes he's seen as the first mathematician or the first philosopher, astrologer, the person who invented the hieroglyphs. Um, he he's a character, I think, around which we've constellated mythology for our civilizational and intellectual beginnings.
Similar to like how Jesus, because that's the way I was comparing it, right? Like Jesus was a person,
Right.
but then all these different things came from it. But correct me if I'm wrong, we do know that Jesus was actually a living person, but we don't know if Hermes Trismegistus was.
Well, scholars have decided to agree that Jesus was real, that his crucifixion was real. There isn't any hard proof that he was real, except for, I think there are 2 old historians who mention him. The second, I forget who, but one is Josephus. But besides that, we don't really have historical records of Jesus. You could argue still to this day that he didn't exist if you wanted to.
I'm sure you get like a lot of people like coming back at you and all over the place, but I just think to myself that there's got to be a plethora of people that are super into their religions, whatever it is, which that's fine. I'm not trying to like chastise that or whatever, but I think that there's probably certain responses you would usually get to something like that, where it's like, well, I don't know, because there is. What are some of the things that people cling to and say this is proof that this happened, but you're like, it's not really proof. You know?
Well, most people who are religious use religious books as their proof. So there's something a little tautological about the way they argue these things. Like, say, the Quran is real because it is the Quran, or the Bible is real because it is the Bible. This happened because it's in the Bible. This happened because it's in the Torah. This happened because it was. And, there isn't, what I like most about these topics is that there is nowhere to actually pin your finger, put your finger down. As much as people want to cling to these things, if
Mhm.
we were going to be totally unemotional about it and just talk about it with pure intellect, pure reason, there's nowhere you could touch your finger and say, this is for sure. This is real.
Mhm. I'm not fully researched in all the different ways that people say, well, this says that he lived,
Mhm.
but I know that people talk about, or not people, there's been things written related to the Great Flood or
Mhm.
whatever. And so I'm assuming that happened.
Well, floods and deluges, tsunamis are a deep collective traumatic experience that we have had physically on the earth before Noah, before the Greeks. I think one of the oldest flood myths is of Utnapishtim
Mhm.
from Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And it's very similar to the flood of Noah.
Mhm.
So delusions show up all around the world in cultures that have never mixed or interacted. And we know that this is a natural phenomenon that we've experienced
Mhm.
as civilization. So
Yeah, but the idea that there was two of each animal on a
that
big boat.
that's in Gilgamesh too. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Utnapishtim gathered two of each of the animals, as well as plants, and his wife and his sons and their wives. But the difference only being that Utnapishtim was granted immortal life after the flood was over because he listened to the gods. Noah is allowed to live for like 900 years, I think, because he walks with God. So it's really very similar,
Mhm.
echoing stories, really.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere or read or whatever somewhere that there was 12 disciples, but then in other religions there was 12 blah or 12 blah, and there's like a lot of core similarities between
Mhm.
all of them. How many different religions share that like similarities like that? Like all of them?
The flood itself, or you just mean in general? Like,
Just in general, yeah.
oh, there are lots of crossovers in different religions, different mythologies, faiths, like the idea of the virgin birth.
Mm,
Krishna or Christ, both were, born of virgins. Thoth is supposedly born of a virgin. He also did exorcisms and healed people. He also died and rose after 3 days.
mhm,
Uh, Even Jesus's story, and let's say the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection, is almost an adaptation of the story of Jonah, who was in the belly of the whale for 3 days.
mhm,
And Christ himself says that you will be given no sign but the sign of Jonah. In that he was saying, I'm going to be back in 3 days. You're going to think I'm dead, but I'm not,
mhm.
in a way.
Yeah. So that's you brought up another thought, the rise of like the sun and the fall of the sun, like the actual sun, I've
Hmm.
heard has been like they made this story based on what they perceived happening in the solar system.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a big theory. Three wise men maybe being Orion's belt, some people say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched the first time that I really kind of dove into this was quote unquote dove in whatever. I watched the Morgan Freeman documentary, this I think it's called The Story of God or Story of God or something like that. And he travels around the world to each religion and like interviews people that are prominent in each religion. Did you see that or
That's
no?
that's so cool. No, I haven't seen it.
It was on National Geographic
Wow.
originally. So, but if you look up I think it's called The Story of God. Morgan Freeman, The Story of God.
I'll
And so he
definitely look it
travels
up.
down, and it was super cool. And that was when I first started my journey of like, what does this fucking life thing mean? You know what I mean? Like, because I tell a lot of people I talk to, like, you know, up until 34, 35, 36, like, I was just smoking weed, drinking beer, and chasing skirts. You know what I mean? Like that was pretty much it. You know, but then you reach a point. I think everybody has either a breaking point, or they reach a point in life where like something's not right. What can I shift? Or they have a big traumatic event. I feel like it was kind of a combination of the both for me. But that was where I first started. Was like I went down this rabbit hole of what is it? Beyond Science on YouTube. There's this guy named Mikey Chin. He also has a cooking channel. But on Beyond Science, he would do like these little 5 to 6 minute, you know, clips or whatever, and it would be something that happened, apparently, allegedly, whatever, on the Earth that was not explained by science, and they would dive into the theories and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here just like, you know, taking it all in. And then I saw The Story of God with Morgan Freeman, and when I watched that, the first thing I took notice of was just like, yeah, I mean, there's so many different stories and beliefs, and like all of them swear on everything that's the way and that everybody else is wrong. I'm like, well, there's some kind of a disconnect here, you know? And then I fell into, fast forward, listening to Aubrey Marcus podcasts, and he had a guy, I forget the name of the dude, but he was, Edward Norton or something, maybe. That's an actor, isn't it? Anyhow, he was talking about the Hermetic principles and diving into that, and I became like super into it. And then I noticed that you were talking. I was like, oh shit, you know. And I bought the book and started reading it, you know. So do you like? And you know, you said in the beginning that like, you know, books are books, right? And they're just books. They're great things, great tools. But you yourself, your belief is just a culmination of experience and research and everything. That's kind of where I feel like I'm at. Like, it's not like I cling to any particular text. I just kind of piece it all together and just go with what feels right, you know?
And I think that in this day and age, that's the way to go, because we have all of these ancient religions and ancient books from all over the world. We have this Abrahamic trilogy with a last prophet and a first prophet, and everything is at everything is at our disposal. And a lot of us today are literate. And I think one important thing to remember is that religions came to people who were illiterate by people who knew the word. And to know the word, to know how to read and write, was a massive privilege. When the Torah was written, when the New Testament was written, when the Quran was written, no one knew how to read. You had one guy holding a book in a town square, reading out to everybody in there. Everybody's like, oh my God, magic man, how do you know how to translate this? And today we can all we can all read and write. And I think like at this point, we should be writing our own myths, our mythology. Like, what is your myth? Where were you born? How were you born? How did you grow up? What did you learn? And like, you can make it as fantastic or as mundane as you want it to be. It's yours. You don't need a magic man to tell you how it is anymore.
Yeah, you don't. You can definitely. I agree with that in a lot of ways. Like, you can find your own magic inside of you. The more you like dissolve the clutter of the subconscious and rewire how you operate in this world, like it's you experience your own magic, and the further along you go, the more you get. But nonetheless, me being, you know, my old self, super logical, didn't grow up in a religious house or nothing of the sort, you know. And so when I first started diving down this road, I was like, well, you just got to fucking make sense, though. It's got to fucking make sense. You know, I didn't check, you know, that's how I was. But now it's like I'm leaning more and more into my own power of consciousness, because that's what all these old heads were talking about. When you really dial it in, they're talking about consciousness, you know. And I think bringing back the Bible one more time, as far as there was something I discovered that was talking about how the Christ, maybe it was you, or maybe I saw it a couple places, but the Christ consciousness, the Santa Claus, and fucking how all that's like just really just talking about the ascension of consciousness? Would
The
you care to
claustrum
expound?
being the Santa Claus thing. Yeah, I've seen that. There, I've seen it in a bunch of places. People talking about the 33 vertebrae of the spine and how it goes down and up, and as above, so below. And to be honest, I don't know about that particularly.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wouldn't even go as far as to complicate it that much, because I feel like as a conscious being, as an aware human, I have no business but like worrying myself or busying myself with what's happening in the unconscious parts of my mind and body. I more would focus on all of the little things that I'm doing, living out my life, sitting up straight and breathing and being kind and learning, continuing to learn, staying curious, always paying attention to when I'm being defensive and why I might be being defensive, and just living with awareness. I feel like everything else does its own work. There, like I don't benefit anything. I'm not saying that like this isn't cool or you shouldn't learn about it, but I personally just feel like you don't really benefit from knowing, even if this is true or not, that, you know, there's this gland that secretes something and it goes down and it comes back up. Like you can't do anything about it. Like you can't.
No, 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 no. Yeah, you definitely can't.
You have to do other work. That's unconscious work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that there's definitely an aspect of my subconscious or ego or old self or whatever you want to call it, super stubborn. I know I've mentioned this before, but like my avatar, you know, there's the new version of me that's like a cartoon, and the old version that's super stubborn. And so, you know, that being said, like I'm more and more stepping in to the present moment, and I've been doing a lot of work on this type of stuff that you were just talking about, and also healing from these past emotions and things like that. And more, I feel the benefits coming of it. But nonetheless, that little old self or whatever is still there and wants me to check out certain things, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like, what's the thing? It says the ego is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant, or something of that nature, right?
Mm.
And so it's like, it's not on us to dissolve and get rid of the ego, but more or less just tame it and have control over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the side of me that's like, all right, well, I'm going to come back one more time. I'm disconnected on this Hermes Trismegistus guy, you know, and like, was he the dude that discovered the Emerald Tablet? Was the Kybalion written because of the Emerald Tablet? And is the Kybalion basically like the Bible? It's just another book that's talking about stuff, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely talk about the Emerald Tablet a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about like the ancients and the possibility, maybe aliens fucking came here and put some stuff down, and maybe these old heads that wrote these original thoughts actually had some kind of a whatever. So do you think it's just something that some dude wrote, or do you think maybe he was inspired by something, you know?
Well, so I can tell you what I know of the Emerald Tablet and the Kybalion. The Emerald Tablet was found in the 7th century by a man named Barinas. And we don't have the tablet that he claims to have found. We have his translation of it from the alleged Syriac that it was in. So he says that he entered a hidden chamber somewhere where there was a pyramid, I think, or a cave. And in the chamber, he found a statue made of gold, a statue of a man. And in the hands of the man, there was the Emerald Tablet. And he couldn't pry it from his hands. So he translated it into Arabic. So the earliest version we have is that 7th century Arabic version of the Emerald Tablet by Balinas that claims to be uh, even older, much older, according to Balinas. Now, but Balinas also says that this was written by Thoth, and we have older texts that are accredited to Thoth, like the Phoenician or Canaanite cosmogony, where it's said that he supposes that the earth was a dark, or all of reality was a dark, formless air that eventually fell in love with its own principles, came together, and formed the first element, which was desire. And from desire was born everything else. So there's this idea that creation was its own creator in a kind of way. So that's Thoth slash Hermes Trismegistus, Emerald Tablet, and Cosmogonies. The Kybalion was written in 1903, I think, or 1908. It's very, very recent. It was written by William Walter Atkinson, I want to say his name was, and two of his friends. They called themselves the Three Initiates. Now, even though the Kybalion claims to be incredibly ancient and purely hermetic, it is actually heavily influenced by the culture of the occult in the United States of the late 1800s. So the 1850 to 1950 was a big, especially the late 1800s, it was a big time for occultism in the United States. So the Kybalion was really a culmination of what they had learned about the Emerald Tablet and what occultists of that time were talking about. So it's not as hermetic as it claims to be. It's really influenced by the occult, but it is very interesting as a text in itself.
When you say occult, does that mean like the weak? What do they call the W people? The W people.
The W people.
Wiccan?
Oh no, that's something else.
No.
So
What is it? What do you mean by that?
the word occult itself means secret or hidden, right? Now, when we're talking about occultism, especially in the United States in the 1800s, we're mostly talking about the revival of Assyriology, Egyptology, new ways inspired by French mystics and British mystics to read holy texts. So occultism is, or US occultism is like a mixture of different practices, schools of thought from all around the world, both modern and ancient, as well as a lot of conjecture, a lot of suggestion. So, and like the Golden Dawn, for example, the Golden Dawn order took from all of these different traditions and put them together in their own manual or their own system. So every occultist group has its own answer, if you will, as to which way all of the different faiths and ideas should be brought together. So that's, and they keep it a secret to them, to the members of this occultist group. And that's why they are occult, essentially.
Okay. Well, now I had this curiosity come over me to ask you a question that I think the last time you and I spoke, I may have brought it up then too, but let's do it again. And that is, with all of your experience, I'm curious in your research and in your experience in this world, like what you believe, or do you like fully surrender to the universe and just whatever it is, or do you believe that when we pass on that you'll return to your higher self and possibly reincarnate in a different dimension or a different form, or do you not think about it?
I do my best not to think about the after death, but I do meditate on death itself because it's a tricky word. Words are what form our reality. And if we're calling it death, and by death we mean a finality, then it's difficult for us to see truly what could possibly be beyond that. So I like to think of it as some kind of transformation, only because in my gut, I feel that things can't be lost. There isn't anything that can ultimately just dissipate into nothing once it has become or come into something. And even if it did, that nothing is the potentiality of something in its own way. So I I don't know. I don't know what happens after here, but
Does the
then
idea,
again, like, yeah, sorry.
you're good. Does the idea of this being some form of a soul school resonate with you?
What do you mean by a soul school?
Like, regardless of whether someone believes in a particular dogma or they're spiritual or they're whatever they are, if they believe in something like that, then you can kind of say it's kind of like soul school, because we're coming here, we're learning how to love, how to experience things, anger, fear, whatever. We're growing, we're expanding consciousness. I think that even people who don't or are not aware that they're expanding consciousness are expanding consciousness, right? Like, so, you know, soul school, just loosely, like whatever it means, who fucking knows, but some form of soul school.
Like Earth is a soul school, you mean? Life is a
Coming
soul
coming
school.
into coming into this existence, that our higher being or self or soul or whatever isn't having a human experience, right? Not not the other way around. And in that
Mhm.
human experience, learning, experiencing, playing, but also expanding consciousness, and it all adds to something. I don't know. Does that
Mhm.
resonate with you at all, or?
Yeah, I just don't necessarily conceptualize of something higher coming down into this lower, like lower plane and higher plane, as much as what it feels like to me is that we are the most natural next step of the earth in its actualization of itself. You know, we seem to think that we are somehow so superior to the nature and world around us when we are just its byproduct. We are what naturally emerged as the earth continued to expand itself. And now we are it, with the ability to look back onto itself and even more so mimic itself. We are able to create and to bring things to life and to make things speak. And we have AI now. Who knows if we won't be able to make something sentient, possibly even more sentient, more functional than us? Who knows? So I
Yeah,
think
there's
we're just part of a. We're just a point on a natural progression. We're definitely a very interesting piece of evolution,
mhm.
but a piece of evolution nonetheless.
Yeah. I just feel you look at space, you know, and how vast it is. If you think, like, if you were just traveling along space and you had no knowledge of Earth whatsoever, and you stumbled upon it, and then you were put into one of these meat suits, and you were wiped clean of whatever it is that you had before,
Mhm.
and let's say even further than that, let's say you all of a sudden you're 18, but you don't have any childhood, but you have the ability to process a little bit more than like an infant that needs its head cradled after birth. Um, you know, you wouldn't be riddled with all of the fear and all of the, you know, anger and resentment and all this shit that's been, you know, cast down to us throughout all these years of politicians and God knows whatever, you know, stuff going on in the world, the one percenters, the Rothschilds or whatever, you know. If you wouldn't have any knowledge of that, and you would just be able to look at the world, the earth, with just beauty and awe and love, you know.
Mhm. Well, that's kind of what we're trying to do. Get to that.
Now we're starting to try and shift it, right? More and
Mhm.
more are like, oh fuck, it's not so bad, really, if you just think about it, you know. It's all dependent on what kind of. All right, I'm sorry. One more thing. So I had a video that I did recently, right, that was talking about, you know, if you're struggling with weed, and maybe I'm just curious, do you hate somebody? Because if you hate somebody, that could be like hindering you because you're harboring that hate, you know. And I had someone that commented, and they're like, "Well, no, because are you saying pedophilia is good? Pedophilia is bad. I'm sorry, blah blah." I'm like, all right, well, that's not. You went
What?
somewhere else, but the thing is, though, in order for me, in order to get on board with the concept of healing, there has to be a foundation of making some kind of sense of it, right? Because if someone is, that happens to them when they're a kid. There's some kind of older person that does something. Yeah, it messes with you, so to speak. But if you learn to heal from it, you can heal from it. But part of that is forgiving whoever did it. Now, in order for me, in my mind, to forgive someone who did it, I got to get on board with this whole every soul is okay. It's just a matter of the shackles we bear while we're here. And that's what makes this vast contrast. And in reality, if you get on board with the concept that everything is divine and it is divinity, then it's all just stuff that's happening. It's all experiences. And it's all what we give the attention to and how we focus on it, which is what all the old heads have been talking about. But for me, the logical mind that I've always had, in order to get on board with that, I had to consciously rewire my subconscious to believe that this is some form of divine soul school. I'm not going to sit here and say I know exactly how it shakes out, but it's something like that. And then if that's the case, then I can look at someone in my past that did monstrous stuff in his existence, my father, but now that he's gone, I can make peace with his soul and know that, oh, he was just here playing a role. And even in his role, he was learning and expanding and stuff. And maybe furthermore, what if up in the cosmos or whatever, they're getting ready for the big show, and there's somebody that's like casting, and they're like, oh, we need somebody to go down and be a terrible father and narcissist and all that stuff. And there's some soul that's like, well, I've already lived a million lives. I haven't done that. I'll do that, And it's a blip to them, to that, the higher version of us, So anyhow, I had to come to this loose understanding or belief in order to get on board with the concept of healing,
Yeah, I feel you. I'm kind of the same, except that it doesn't stop at one person for me or one experience. And it more so came to me accepting the fact that this is not fair. The place that we're at here is not fair game. You're either lucky or unlucky as to where you end up being born and to who you end up being.
But that's from our perspective, though. That's from my perspective and your perspective based on the experiences we've had in this existence.
Yeah.
But a higher soul or self or whatever, like, man, it's just a game, dude. You're down there learning. It's fun. It's fine.
Yeah. But I mean, we know that these, there are experiences that are just terribly traumatic, and there are people who go through things that break them, unfortunately, and they never get their life back. Not everybody gets their life back.
And maybe they came here to experience that for some reason. Is my thought.
Yeah, it's possible.
We can't understand it. Like, how the fuck are we going to understand that? But maybe.
Well, again, I always, when I'm thinking about these things, I always go back to nature, and nature is indifferent. Nature really doesn't care. She's brutal and violent and beautiful and awesome and awful all at once. And I don't know. The scheme is so much larger than what my mind might be able to grasp. And all I can grasp really is that it's not fair. And I need to forgive, like you said, whoever it was, 1 or 10 or 1,000 people, myself, the world, nature, because, there isn't always retribution. There's a lot of things that I'd never got justice for. I just kind of had to let them go. So.
Yeah. I think that there's power in getting that justice just in your own mind. Like, for instance, in nature, going out and meditating and speaking it out and rewiring it in your subconscious as if you did get your justice. Because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what really happened and what you think to happen.
Well, that's why I like to read, because I think nothing, from what I've experienced, nothing affects the subconscious mind. Nothing I do affects my subconscious mind as deeply as reading a good book, because that's where that sits. All those worlds that I've traveled through and all of the novels I've read, the religious books, the mythologies, the philosophies, they all live in me subconsciously. They're not here in my conscience.
Yeah.
They add to the depth of who I am beneath it all. So it all drowns out in a way my experiences. It contextualizes my experiences. I can look to gods and goddesses who have been through fates that somehow echo my own, but are 1,000 times more horrible. And somehow that gives me some kind of ease.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know where we were going to go with this conversation. I had in my mind, I was thinking I was definitely going to be asking you a shit ton of questions about Hermetic principles and all that stuff. And I could probably bore the shit out of anybody that was listening to this by continuing to go down that road and continuing to peg and ask more questions.
It's all connected.
Because like it doesn't, some certain parts of it, I'm like, I don't get it. But I'm also like, it's okay that I don't get it, It's fine that I don't have to get it, and then I was thinking, well, let's just start talking about what we believe instead, and I think that's kind of a fun little twist for this scenario. But as far as like the not fair concept, one of the ways that I talk about, how I got to my belief is looking at everything as, as like Dolores Cannon talks about, that it's like a big show or whatever, and that this is some kind of divine galactic play or movie or whatever, but not anywhere near in the concept that we can try and understand that, or simulation. Like it's not Grand Theft Auto 5, but there is some kind of a quantum field and some kind of connection to everything that is divine. And so if it is some kind of a movie or play or something like that, imagine if you were watching a movie and like in the opening scene, the guy gets the girl and the job and the money. Like it'd be pretty boring movie to watch. You wouldn't, and so there's that, but then it's like way more complex than that, right? Like all of the different things that have happened in the world, the Holocaust and like all the murders and 9/11 and all these things that have happened. But from our perspective, it's like, that's not fair, what I'm saying? But it's like from a higher perspective, from God's perspective, if you will, even though I don't think that he's a man in the sky, but from the field of divinity, it's like, no, this is just the thing that we're doing. And it's, when you're out of this, you'll understand. But right now I get it, but you're fine.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, the grand scheme of things is so far beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, right.
But there are things that if we were to stop and be passive about, we would be empowering oppressive forces, right? Because there are still children who are starving. There are still people being dispossessed. There are still people being attacked and oppressed based on their religion or their color. And for us to all stop and say, you know what, it's all part of the grand scheme. That, I think that's a little, it's almost like a spiritual bypass, because why isn't you calling for justice part of the scheme? So instead of us trying to stop and justify everything and say, oh, this is just part of the plan, since that's not our place and we don't have the authority to say what is and isn't part of the plan, really, I think it's more important that we move closer to our center, to our heart, and ask ourselves what our heart feels about this X, Y, Z, and act according to that. Make your search, your fight for justice part of the grand plan by enacting it, not by sitting on the side and saying, oh, this is the grand plan, I'm just going to watch. Like, no, Jesus talked about a grand plan, but he didn't sit by and just watch it happen. He played a part in changing it. He said, the kingdom is coming and I'm here to let you know. Come with me, follow me, do this, do that. He didn't just say, hey, the kingdom is coming, want to go get a beer? Like,
Yeah. I understand that spiritual bypass way of looking at it. And I think for me, I'm still open. Like all of these are just loose thoughts, and it's not like nothing is definitive. It's just like learning and growing as I go along with all of this. But I definitely understand that, and there's definitely been people throughout history who have stepped up and made an impact that's powerful. You know, MLK, Martin Luther King, obviously is one. There's plenty of them out there that have done that. And if they were just, you know, in tune with their whatever, then like maybe they wouldn't do that. But everybody's different too, right? Like it's all unique. So maybe my job is to just continue to work on my relationship to myself, because I do know for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that the more you do that, the better you operate in the world, in your world, and the world around you. And then helping others do their own thing. But like, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to go up to the White House and be like, you guys are fucking up, you know. But there are people out there that are going to do that, right? And maybe some of those people are the people who maybe they're smart, they've had it, you know, they got good morals and they're caring, but they're still acting on desires to fix things and et cetera. And so maybe they're the ones in this play that are meant to be more that. But my job is, and that's just 2 fucking people out of 8 billion or whatever it is. But you know what I'm saying? Maybe there's some kind of like a mixture of that. So my role is to go sit under a tree and hug it and eat oranges and fruit and stuff. And, you know.
Oh, definitely. Which is why I said it's, you know, the only thing we really have to do is move closer to our own center, listen to our own heart. If your heart says, all right, I need to go pray under a tree today, that's what you got to do. If your heart says, I need to go protest in front of the White House, that's what you got to do. Like it just depends where you're being called. Like you said, everybody has a different role. We can't all be fighting. We can't all be sitting aside. We can't all be praying.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you watch the news?
Rarely.
Yeah. Read the news?
Sometimes, just so I know what's going on, but I tend to avoid it.
Yeah. Same here. So, and that's something that I've talked when I'm working with people. Sometimes I can just tell like they're wound up on like another level, and I'm like, "Do you watch the news?" And they're like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Can you not do that for 30 days and see what happens?" You know, just because there's obviously a lot of fear mongering there. But then I had one guy I was working with, and I was like, "All right, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. You can read the news on Mondays and Fridays, but don't watch it anymore. How about that?" And he was like, "Ugh." And I was like, "Let's try it," you know? So, because there's definitely something to be said for that. They're all corporations, you know?
Well,
I mean,
I think people forget, like, because, you know, I don't think anything is like inherently good or bad, but,
right.
you know, like we need media, we need news, but we also need to have the awareness, a critical enough mind to recognize that a news or media company is a for-profit company, and its first and foremost goal is to get you to click and watch. So it will say anything and everything to get you hooked on what it has to offer, because that's how it makes its money. So that, like, once you have that, just that awareness, you just have that standard in your mind, you can watch the news, but discern what you wanna take from it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and this is still, you know, very simple. I mean, I'm leaving out the whole idea of biases and who the company belongs to and what their political views are. Like,
Sure.
you have to keep everything in mind. There's a certain level of awareness that I think a lot of us are coming to in this day and age. There's definitely like this major paradigm shift in the way that we approach each other, the world, media.
Great awakening.
In a way, yeah, kind of. I don't know if it's like an awakening as much as like a shift, you know, because I think we're awake already. Somebody was saying this on my live the other day, that they were like one of the Pleiades or Pleiadians, and they were here to enlighten people, or like they were talking to someone who was unenlightened. And I was like, yeah, I feel like this starseed stuff is a slippery slope. Like we might be veering into some neo-Nazi territory here. And I don't think anybody's job is to enlighten anybody. I think everybody is enlightened, but we are bogged down by programming in a lot of ways.
Right. It's
And
more decluttering the shit that is
right,
bogging you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
rather than awakening or becoming higher in awareness, higher in enlightenment, it's a shift away from the turmoil, a shift away from the programming, shifting things around, literally just clearing space
Mhm.
for you, whatever that is. What is you? And what does you think? What does you think? Yeah.
There's massive power in that, and there's definitely a shit ton of people out there that are just on autopilot, check to check, and pay bill, go to work, go home, and they're frustrated, and they're watching the news, and they're watching Netflix, and drinking coffee with a bunch of creamers and stuff in it. You got creamer in that coffee? I'm just messing with you. No, I think that that's all. We're on the same page with a lot of stuff. I really
Mhm.
feel like you and I could talk for a very long time, and I'm
Mhm.
trying to like think about where to go with you so that I'm mindful of your time. But I feel like you and I could have another one of these at some point down the road.
Oh yeah, I would love to.
Do you
And
do a
I
podcast or no?
not yet. I might. I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going next. I just do what comes up and see
Yeah,
where it takes me.
yeah,
But I yeah, I understand what you mean in terms of like just being in a constant search. Because if you were to ask me what I believe in, I would have nothing to tell you. You know, I think you asked me before, and like I don't have any beliefs. I'm just curious. Like I'm always just infinitely curious.
hmm,
And there is always more to find, there's more to read, there's more room to breathe. There's always a deeper breath. You know, when you're meditating, no matter how much you meditate, there's always a deeper stretch in your yoga, no matter how much you do yoga. And it's so baffling how infinite it feels. You know, and the more that you go deeper, the more you realize how little we actually know or have access to. Like, it's
yeah,
no, it's such a it's so vainglorious to say that, you know something, or
yeah, right,
this is
right.
it. This is my faith. This is my belief. Like, what? How? How are you doing this? Like, really? Even with
Yeah,
all these givens? Like,
yeah. There's certain things that you can say like, well, if I drop this hammer, it's going to hit the ground, obviously. Or the placebo effect is something that scientists recognize, but I don't think they can tell you like why it works the way
Mhm.
it works. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, do you have like a philosopher that you really really like from any particular time in history, and you like their stuff a lot?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Nietzsche.
Okay.
But I
Any-
know he's like problematic for some people, but
Oh no,
um,
I've actually looked into him a little bit. I had a buddy of mine that was telling me about it, and I was checking it out. And there's some stuff I can get on board with there for sure. But
mhm.
now I asked you that, and I'm like, I want more. Do you have any more?
Oh yeah, actually I've been reading this today.
Plato. Okay.
Plato. The Last Days of Socrates. You know, if I had to say one philosopher that has affected my way of thinking the most, it would be Socrates, or Socrates/Plato. Because once you start reading the plays, Plato's plays like this, The Last Days, The Republic, Gorgias, or Timaeus, they're Socrates is so funny and so wise, and he never says anything. You know, you can't actually get a fact out of Socrates because all he does is ask questions. People come to him with facts and arguments and ideas and convictions, and all he does is ask questions that make their whole house of cards fall apart. But he never says anything for sure. And his whole spiel is that, you know, we don't know anything and I don't know anything. And if you think I'm wise, it's because I'm ignorant and I know of my own ignorance.
I'm not trying to like compare myself to the likeness of Socrates, but that's
Why
kind of
not?
me in a lot of ways, you know?
Oh, that's good. Why not? I mean, it's a good character to aspire to be.
I
And I
didn't
think
even
you would
know I was
enjoy it.
doing it, but apparently I am in a
You
way.
would enjoy.
When when I have someone I'm talking to, sometimes I'll just ask, they'll say something's going on, and I'll just say, well, what's your resistance to that? And like, what do you mean? Like, why are you resisting it?
Mm.
Why? And going down that road. And I don't really have like, I'm not going to tell you, well, it's this. I'm just like, a lot of the stuff is just asking questions to people, and then they sort it out on their own, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I have like things that have worked for me and some little guidance. Well, Eckhart Tolle says non-attachment, non-resistance, and non-judgment are the 3 key aspects of true freedom and enlightened living, or something like that. I
Mm-hmm.
paraphrase that, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's a lot of the way there's nothing that I'm like, this definitely works, and I know why, aside
Yeah.
from, yeah, if you work to do some inner healing, some emotions, and you can consciously rewire, your subconscious, things like that. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
get it.
Yeah, life is too personal. Life is too subjective for anybody to have the answer, capital A. But
Right.
I think you would like Plato. I think anybody with an inquiring mind would like Plato/Socrates because it doesn't teach you any hardcore truth. It just it gives you a way of thinking that maybe you're already tapped into and can hone in on, maybe, haven't thought of. When I first started reading it, I was, like 14 maybe, and I thought it was just the most genius thing I'd ever seen. Like I read it and I was like, yeah, this guy understands me. Cause why? Like that's what he's asking. Why? Why
Yeah,
is it a cup? What makes it a cup? Why is this a ball? What makes a ball round? What makes an apple round? Why? Like it's just very
yeah.
it's very interesting. I think you would love it.
I think I would too. In
Mm.
fact, that's on my short list now for books. I've got so many books that I bought where I'm like, yeah, and then I haven't read them yet. But Psycho-Cybernetics I'm reading right now, which I really, really like that a lot.
Oh, interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Maxwell Maltz or something like that. He was a plastic surgeon, and his whole thing was like, I want to help people feel better and stuff. But he noticed that when he would fix people, that they were not fixed, and that they would continue to have the same things that they were suffering from, because they thought, oh, I fixed my nose and everything will be good, and it wasn't. And so then he went down a road of research, et cetera, whatever, wrote this book. And a lot of these books I find them from like listening to a podcast, and so you got to check this one out, and so that's how I found it. And then it kept popping up. I noticed some other people, hey, have you seen that? Oh, fuck yeah, I actually just got it, but I just dove into it. It's really, really good stuff. Yeah,
Mm.
I would highly suggest that for sure. Socrates and Nietzsche, Eckhart Tolle. Do you like Eckhart Tolle or Tolle?
I don't know much about him, to be
No.
honest. I don't read a lot of like contemporary or modern stuff, as douchey as that sounds, but like
No.
I'm just a nerd, like a fiend for really old books.
Really old books. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's not that old, but the Psycho-Cybernetics is a little bit older. I think it's not
Mm.
super far back, but it's a little bit older. There's something else that we've talked about before too, briefly, is tarot cards. What's your thought on that stuff? Tarot cards and
Oh, I
getting
love the tarot.
yeah.
I love the tarot. Um, I A lot of people use tarot for divination or cartomancy, which you can. It's fun, kind of like the way you would use the I Ching,
Mm-hmm.
uh, another like divination system, supposedly the oldest
That recently.
divination. Yeah.
Okay.
But I like to use tarot as a tool for projection. And I feel that anyone could benefit from developing a tarot practice, a personal practice, because we as humans are big projectors. We are hardcore projectors. And when you introduce a practice in your life that is dedicated to projection, you start to project less in your day to day life because you've dedicated that space for that energy and that exercise. It's an exercise in imagination, in speaking to yourself, in prompting yourself to think about things that you would otherwise avoid, in projecting what you would otherwise project onto others. And I feel like it's just very meditative and healthy in a world where we don't have common spiritual practices. And another thing I like about tarot, more than reading for this for yourself, I like the magic that is created between two people when reading tarot, between the reader and the querent. There's a very it's a very beautiful space, that space between the two, that conversation, because it's not factual and it's not intellectual and it's not left brain. It's all very right brain. You know, you and someone are literally playing with your imaginations. I'm opening cards for you. I'm seeing all these narratives and I'm trying to pull together the common thread between all of these cards that might be telling me the story of your life. And it just creates this very magical space, this communal space. So in a world without community, especially our new world, right? The Western world, without community and spiritual practices and all the things we used to do to be human, I feel like
Yeah.
tarot plays a lot of roles. It activates archetypes, it reminds us of myths and stories, it gives us a way to be imaginative and creative, to connect with one another, to open up to each other, to feel safe with one another and with ourselves. So that's more the way that I like to use it, as opposed to, cartomancy or reading the future. I don't really read the future.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I was curious if which that kind of answers the question. I was curious if you thought that there was a chance that maybe the conscious mind is so powerful that if you're reading your own cards and you shuffle it a certain way, that somehow the quantum field aligns the right cards for you to see, or
Yeah.
it's the quantum field and your mind working together or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely think there's something there in terms of, a quantum mechanics at work. Because when I read for people, my sessions are all online. I do all my sessions through Zoom. So I'm here in Lebanon and you're in Florida. Like, I have so many clients that come in from the US. We're worlds apart, time zones apart. And somehow, before they come in, all I really do is kind of channel their intention, channel their energy, look at their chart, shuffle the cards, let cards fall. And every single time they come in, and I'm like, look, before we get started, this is what I see, this and this and that. I don't know if something's going on. Did you have a fight with your dad yesterday? Like, what is happening? And they'll be like, how did you know? Like,
Oh,
I didn't tell you anything. I'm like, listen, I'm just the messenger. Okay. And there's
yeah.
definitely some kind of quantum entanglement going on. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely think there's this magic between a mixture of order and chaos.
Hmm.
And it's up to the reader. A good reader, I think, knows how to distill the order from the chaos of the cards before them
Hmm.
in the best possible way. There's intuition involved, there's knowledge of the cards, knowledge of the myths, your own um, emptiness, if you will, your own clarity as a vessel. Like, before I go into readings, I take about half an hour to just meditate, sit down with myself, shuffle, think of the person. It's all it's all part of this energetic exchange.
It's dark there now.
We don't have electricity in Lebanon, so yeah.
Like a sign from the universe or something. So what just happened right there?
The power went out. We had the motor on, so
Oh.
either the solar panel system will come on now, or it
Or it's
won't.
time for nighttime stories by the fire with Elianne.
Right. Let me see.
It's all good. We I'm not
Oh,
worried about it. Oh,
there
hey,
we
look
go.
at that.
And we're back.
And we're back. That was a cool little moment there. So to
Right on
kind of
schedule.
bring us to the fold here. So with that being said, there was something that I saw recently with Joe Dispenza, which I love him. I'm sure you at least like him a little bit, right?
I also haven't. I don't know much. I've seen maybe a video or something.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
So he's he's someone who, and I'm gonna not say exactly what happened to him, but he was a chiropractor, I think, and he had some kind of a something happened to him where he was debilitated and couldn't move his body and stuff. And his doctor was like, "Hey, do these things, but you're probably not going to be able to walk again," kind of stuff, and et cetera, whatever. And so he did his own research, whatever he did, and then he started going into the mind and like really diving into that shit and healing himself from the inside out. And now he walks and talks and does all things just fine. But he's got a bunch of different books, and he's studied like the brain when in meditation, and has done a lot of like research in the quantum field and stuff like that. And so super cool, newer person, not dead person you could check out.
And that really brings us back to the Kybalion, right? Because the essence that you want to take from the Kybalion and from the Hermetic teachings is that all is mind. All is mind. It's very there is no spoon kind of thing. And I mean, it's I know that science and doctors have to be scientific and they have to be as harsh as possible, as real as possible. But it's crazy when I think about it, how many people have been told that they would never heal and could have if someone hadn't told them that. If a doctor hadn't said, listen, it's a 99.9% chance that you'll never walk again. I mean, Joe Dispenza is obviously a very powerful person, but how many people did not have that power and but could have if they hadn't been told that?
Yeah. Same thing with being diagnosed with ADD, PTSD, any of that stuff. It's like, now that I've got this now. But the question that I wanted to kind of ask you and bring us to a fold here, which might be beneficial for the random listener who has made it this far, which if you have, thank you for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, guys.
Right. But and the way I'm going to put this is, so many people in their life, if there's something coming up in the future that is like uncertain, maybe they have to get a new job, or maybe they need to find a new place to live, or maybe the relationship or whatever, and there's something in the future that's like, frustrating or whatever. And so one of his core teachings is, the power of intention and then allowing, right? But most people are not able to allow because the subconscious is still got a big hold on them. And I still have things that pop up in my life every now and then where I'm exercising these abilities and working with them and stuff like that. So I really feel like, for me personally, I've come a long way in that regard, but nonetheless, we are human. And so the idea there is that, like, if you are someone like that, if you say you're in a situation where, your rent just raised and your job just fired you and you're like, fuck, what am I going to do, sort of thing. His message is that if you can just learn to, meditate and get in tune with the present moment, in tune with the quantum field, and set intention in your morning and set intention in your evening, and just operate in a state of peace from a place of just knowing it's going to be okay, and letting go of that friction, now you allow the quantum field to dance. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's always worth contextualizing yourself too. You just lost a job, let's say, but you have a friend who's willing to let you sleep on their couch. That's something to be grateful for. How many people don't have that? Stop and ask yourself, how many people don't have however little you think you have and are still making by? And like you said, just that knowing, which is difficult. I can't say that that's not hard to do, depending on your circumstances. Because some people's circumstances are, beyond imagination. But
Sure.
But when you have enough comfort to be able to just sit and worry, that should be enough to tell you that you have enough comfort to be okay. Like, you clearly have enough time to be having anxiety for the last week and eating chips in front of Netflix. Like, you could be okay if you wanted. You're all right. Like, you're all right relative to a large mass of the world. You're all right. Like,
And I think that for anyone that this resonates with, that whether they're new or not, that hasn't heard this, I think that one of the most transformative things someone can do is just have a morning and evening ritual that doesn't involve media boxes. And in some form, it involves self-love and getting yourself in a good mood and thinking about good stuff despite what's going on, because now you're creating momentum, you know, and that's like the most powerful shift anybody can make. And I tell everybody I work with that. Because so many people get up and now they're checking their thing. Oh, I gotta fucking get over here now. And I want to, you know, and it's like, you gotta fucking like take that time for yourself, you know.
Straight to the social media, the news, the emails. It's like, for me, I stopped doing that when I realized that, well, I asked myself essentially, am I waking up for myself or for the rest of the world? And I think I would rather just start waking up for me and then, you know, getting with the world afterwards. After I'm done with the morning stretches, the meditation, a couple of poems, some written thoughts, like the world isn't going anywhere. I don't need to rush. Like there's no why.
That's the biggest thing too, is like taking out that element of rush and checking yourself. Why do I feel like I'm in a rush right now? You know,
because speed has become a virtue in our culture.
Yeah, we've been trained that way. We've been programmed, you know. Yeah. Ooh, I got a quick question for you. Do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, of course. I have time. Like, don't worry about me.
Okay, cool. So thought of, if we think about maybe the schools and all this stuff was set up to get us to go get factory jobs and a white picket fence and retire and all these things, maybe, right? Probably. But if you think of what I was thinking about, because subconscious, the power of subconscious and the words we speak to ourselves, you know, so if you say, well, I'm struggling this week to do X or whatever, you probably say, I struggle a lot. You know, I'm struggling with this and struggling with that. Not you particular, but anybody, right? And so when we think about math, which is the language of the fucking universe, right? Why did they call it math problems and not math challenges? Could it be that they were gearing us up to be so comfortable with problems, and math is not a fun thing to just get started on when you're fucking 8, right? And so that creates like a level of trauma in your mind of fucking math problems, math homework, you know. And some people excelled at it, but for a lot of people, you know, and now it's like, I got a problem. Why don't you have a challenge? It's a challenge that you can overcome. You know? So I don't know if that resonates with you or not. But.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to reframe it. It's like when people are asking me about shadow work, and I like to say, it's not shadow work, it's shadow play. You got to learn to play with your shadow. It's not going anywhere. You can either struggle and wrestle with it, or you can dance with it. And that's a play. Yeah. I love that. Math challenges. That's cool.
Right.
But I always loved math. So
yeah, well, it's different for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's like the indoctrination of problem. Go to problem number 22. Problem here. Problem. You're just saying problem the whole fucking day, you know?
Yeah, that's messed up. Now that I think about it, yeah, that's heavy.
You know, like, who knows? I don't know. These are the thoughts that come to me every now and then. So, well, if someone was wanting to check you out, what would they check you out for? Would they check you out just to hear you listen or hear you talk about theories and stuff like that? Or what would you have someone reach out to you for?
I mean, I read tarot for people sometimes. I interpret dreams. Sometimes I'll have like a, session with someone who just wants to talk about their journey, their life journey or spiritual journey. And I just like to talk, essentially. Like I read a lot, and I like to talk about the things I read and ask questions and see what other people think about what I've read. Because there's always like a new perspective to be had. Like, you just taught me something about math that's super cool. I'd never thought of it like that.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, some people like to read my little book. I'm working on another book now.
Cool. What's your little book?
It's a little alchemical book. It's just cool. Like short and sweet alchemical thoughts about life. It's called Quickies, literally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
How would
Yeah.
they find that? They just go to your link on your
Yeah.
profile?
At my website. Yes.
Okay.
On TikTok or Instagram or Twitter. Yeah. Or YouTube.
Okay. I'll make sure to
Those are
put
all the platforms.
a couple links to those things there. So if it's cool with you to hang tight for just a second, we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you, everybody, for checking this out. And I'm going to do everything in my power to twist her arm and have her back again in the future. And I may have more questions about stuff then, maybe. Right? Thank
Cool.
you for hanging out with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.